Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to France once again for the first time in what feels like a very long time. I honestly couldn't tell you what the last French beer that I reviewed on the channel was, and that's a shame because there's a lot of French and Francophone people watching the channel these days, so hopefully we can fix that going forward. But anyway, the beer that we're going to have a look at today comes from a brewery that is featured on the channel twice before. The last reviews that I did involving this brewery appeared on the channel back in maybe 2020, 2021, sometime around then. But this is a brewery that are very well respected these days. One of the French breweries that are really pushing their beers across Europe, which is very nice to see. France is of course primarily a wine country, but my experience is that in Europe the wine countries also tend to have very, very good craft beer, so do make sure you seek it out. France, Italy, Slovenia, countries like this certainly have some very, very good stuff. And the beer that we're going to have a look at from these guys today is a style that I have had from this brewery before. It's one that they get quite a bit of plaudits for actually in the French beer circles from what I gather, and it's a style that I very much enjoy, a sub-style that is one of my favourite actually within this kind of style umbrella. I've heard very, very good things about this too, so it was a really nice find, this one here in Hong Kong. Quite unexpected, but very nice nonetheless. So yeah, needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Very happy to return to this brewery as well. So hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to a little area to the southeast of Paris called Lyon. To be specific, we're going to go to a little village, I guess we could say, called Vaumont, and Vaumont happens to be home to the wonderful Brasserie Popihn. So, this particular beer comes in at 11% ABV. To give it its full name, it's the Imperial Russian Stout, Café Arabica Du Pérou, and I think from that name you can guess what this one is, an Imperial Coffee Stout. So yeah, this is yet another beer that I picked up from the wonderful Gur Beer in the One Mall in Tsim Sha Tsui in Kowloon here in Hong Kong. And they had three beers from these guys, if I'm not mistaken. There was a chili stout, there was one, I forget what the third one was, but then there was this one, and of course I love Imperial coffee stouts, so I thought, you know, I have to go for this. So yeah, very nice to find some Popihn beers here in Hong Kong, very, very unexpected, but hopefully we can get some very nice French beer over here in Hong Kong over the next little while too. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Brasserie Popihn before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the French playlist along with a number of other things. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, not as often as I would like, but do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Brasserie Popihn once again then, and I will apologise in advance for any bad French pronunciation. It's been a very long time since I did French at school. But yeah, Brasserie Popihn, as I mentioned to you already, are based in a little place called Vaumont to the southeast of Paris, kind of close to Troyes and Auxerre. And this is also known as the Bourgogne-Franche-Comté region, and I think it's known historically as Lyon, not of course to be confused with the city in the southeast, if I'm remembering correctly, but or south. Yeah, southeast I think. But yeah, there are a number of breweries in this region these days, so it has become quite well known for its food and drink. But Brasserie Popihn was founded by Arnaud Popihn back in 2015, and it's based in an old barn that underwent quite extensive renovations, and this brewery is located on Arnaud's parents' farm, and a number of the ingredients that they use in their beers are actually grown on the site, and the barley, wheat and oats that they use in the malt are actually certified organic, from what I understand, although the beers themselves are not certified organic because of the hops not being available in organic form. But they began full tilt production in 2017, and they very quickly made a name for themselves, particularly in Paris, due to Arnaud's connections in the beer scene there. And over the course of 2018, they apparently brewed about 100,000 litres of beer, and they began to export their beers to different countries in Europe as well. But they've continued to expand their capacity over the last few years, and they managed to kind of weather the COVID storm as well. These days, they are apparently working on producing wine and cider. They've got 2 hectares with 67 different grapevines, and they've also planted an orchard as well, and other fruit trees, and the products of that, of course, are going to be used in the beer and cider production, which is kind of cool. They do have a barrel program these days too. When I took a little look at their Instagram page, they had a few different barrel-aged Imperial Stouts and things like that, and as of January 2025, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 405 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. So that number will very likely continue to increase as time goes on. And as I said, Brasserie Popihn are one of the French breweries that you really should check out if you get the chance. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about these guys for the moment. If you want to learn more about Brasserie Popihn, you can check out the Facebook and Instagram pages. These guys don't actually have a website, which is a little bit unusual, but yeah, you can follow them on social media and see what you find. They are pretty prolific on there and keeping you up to date with all the different beers and things that come out. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Brasserie Popihn for the moment. So go and check out those links, like I said. So yeah, let's go on and have a little look at the beer itself. So this one is, of course, a 330ml bottle. I actually can't remember what I paid for this one in Gur beer, but I think it might have been 70 or 80 Hong Kong dollars, so maybe about 8 or 9 euros, which for an import beer, especially from quite a rare country, if you like, when it comes to beer, I was quite happy with that. But yeah, the artwork on this one's quite interesting. It actually looks like a bunch of people, I think it's a bunch of people studying somewhere, if you look at that. So yeah, there you can see one of the Brasserie Popihn, the main Brasserie Popihn symbol on the outside there. That is also on the bottle cap, as you can see when the camera zooms in. And yeah, it doesn't actually tell you all that much about the beer. When I had a little look at the Untappd page, it didn't even say anything about where the coffee was from, but I'm guessing it's Peruvian Arabica beans. But it also says on the side here that there's that some of the coffee is from Java in Indonesia, so I'm really a little bit confused as to exactly where it's from. But as you know, if you've watched the channel for any length of time, I love an Imperial coffee stout. Coffee beans are one of my favourite adjuncts to use in beer because they're just as you know, they're as diverse as hops. You've got the different bean variety overall, then you can think about where it's grown, different soil profiles and water profiles are going to affect the flavour. Then you've got the mazel, the metres above sea level, which affects the flavours that come out of it too. But yeah, an Imperial, a Russian Imperial Stout, sorry, 11% ABV with some coffee added into it. So yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass then and see what it's all about. I'm very curious to see what this is going to have in store for us. And it's, as I say, nice to have a French beer after quite some time, actually. So there we are. Right. Yeah, no sediment in this one either, actually. Does it say when it was bottled? I don't know if it says... it says it's best before 2027, so this beer might actually be a year or two old, come to think of it, because usually they put 5 years on these things. But yeah, anyway, there we go. So as you can see, when this beer poured, it didn't have much of a head on it, just a little kind of thin foamy layer there, which I would have said was a kind of more light tan colour, but there's just a little ring around the edge of the glass there. Now, if I bring that up to the camera, you can see there's just a little bit of a fawn, light tan coloured ring sitting all around the edge of the glass there, and you can see a few of the bubbles just coming up toward the surface there. But yeah, lovely dark sort of ebony rosewood colour. Yeah, lovely dark ebony rosewood colour. As you'd expect from the Imperial Stout, remember the colour of your beer is dependent on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer as well can affect its colour too, but when it comes to black beers such as Imperial Stouts, that's not going to make too much of a difference, in all honesty. But yeah, all in all, the appearance of this one is pretty much what you would expect of an Imperial Stout. I don't think we really need to say all that much about it, but yeah, not too much carbonation visible in this one. I have to say, just a few bubbles kind of coming up to the surface there. So yeah, let's go on and have a wee look at this one then and see what it's all about. Let's do the aroma. I'm very curious about this. So, oh, that smells very nice. Nothing surprising about this one, incidentally, but yeah, it does smell just really, really nice. Quite a silky and quite sweet Imperial Coffee Stout, I would say, in all honesty. Yeah, I'm quite happy with how this one's turned out, in all honesty. Yeah, quite chocolatey as well. Yeah, so the way that one goes together, I think, is very, very nice. Yeah, just beautiful, beautiful smelling beer, this one. As I always say, take a bit of time to just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But yeah, let's just break this down and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. So, the backbone of the beer, yeah, the backbone of this beer, you've got a lovely sort of little touch of roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust in there. That's going to be your black malt or your special beer, whatever's being used. That's definitely in here. But it's not too aggressive, actually. There's definitely a little hint of a kind of woodiness in there. So yeah, roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust, a little bit of woodiness. So yeah, roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust, a little bit of woodiness. On top of that, there's like a little bit of rye bread for sure. You can smell this kind of sweet, oily sort of rye bread. And then above that, you start to get some kind of like cakey notes out of this one. So it's a bit like a kind of chocolate brownie, chocolate sponge type character that's coming out of this beer. So yeah, I really do like how that pieces together in this one. That's lovely. So yeah, this like dark chocolate brownie, chocolate spongy type characters coming out of this beer. Within that side of it, you do get a little bit of a kind of nutty character too. So yeah, a lovely little bit of nuttiness in there. I can't place exactly what type of nut it is, but yeah, the nuttiness that comes out of this, I think, is very, very nice. And on top of that, you start to get the kind of chocolatey character. So for me, this beer is interesting because it does have a little bit of a milky chocolate aroma to it, you know, like the sort of 40% cocoa chocolate. But further back in the nose, you're getting a more oily, dark chocolate quality out of this one, you know, like 60, maybe more than that, sort of 70, 80% cocoa chocolate. Doesn't come across as being like too dark and harsh, but yeah, the way that everything kind of pieces together in this one, I think, is really, really nice. And as I say, that gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, I like that about this one. So for me, the chocolatey notes, they kind of linger there into the aroma as well. And the elephant in the room that we haven't mentioned yet is the coffee. So the coffee for me, I'd say the coffee bean that comes out of this one is it's quite aromatic. It's a soft roast, I think. It's not too earthy or anything like that, but it's quite an aromatic coffee bean, and I feel that it's mixing in with the chocolate a little bit. So yeah, it's quite an aromatic coffee bean that comes out of this one. Yeah, quite an aromatic coffee bean. Quite just very soft earthiness to it. A little, quite red fruity as well. You know, there's like sort of plums and figs and stuff, and a sharper raisiny note coming out of it. Yeah, quite aromatic, a lot of red fruity character to it, and then yeah, a little touch of smooth roast in there. But above that with this beer, after you look at the coffee beans will kind of sit in the top of the nose there, and then you have the yeah, after that you absolutely have some of the, yeah, on top of some of that you have the kind of brown sugary character coming out of the beer. So there's a wee bit of like a roasty toasty brown sugary character coming out of this one, and then yeah, you've got a more kind of leathery, yeah, there's a sort of roasty toasty brown sugar in there, a little bit of a leathery brown sugar. And of course when you've got leathery brown sugars, that can sometimes be an indicator of how long your wort boil is. You know, the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelize and so on. But yeah, there's not too much leatheriness in there, but yeah, there's a bit of toastiness, a bit of leatheriness, a nice kind of oily, there's a little touch of like treacle molasses, and yeah, there's a little bit of that kind of treacly molasses sort of thing, and there's yeah, a little bit of a kind of sweeter caramel too, maybe a bit of toasty biscuit at the same time. But yeah, I think we've covered everything. You know, you could also say there's a bit of a tobacco-y aroma to this as well. And one of my chemistry projects was to analyse tobacco, and yeah, the aroma of this does remind me of some of the stuff we were looking at there. But yeah, that is quite interesting. But yeah, for the yeah, in terms of the malty, yeah, in terms of the malty side of the beer, I think the way that this one kind of goes together, I think is really, really nice in that perspective. The yeasty side of the beer, at the back of the nose, for me, it's quite sort of like, yeah, it's kind of like chocolate brownie like, chocolate cakey like, yeah, chocolate brownie, chocolate cake, and then yeah, you have like a little bit of yeah, it's got a little bit of a kind of like almost sweet rye bready and bread crusty type character to it as well. So you've got these little notes at the back of the nose there. But beyond that, I don't think we need to say anything more about the malty and yeasty side of the beer, or the coffee itself. We've covered that quite well, but I would say the coffee, the more that you smell of this beer, the more kind of aromatic it sort of becomes. So yeah, all in all, it's really, really quite interesting, this one. In terms of the hoppy side of the beer then, so as I've said many a time, the Imperial Stout is not the most hop forward style of beer in the first place, but obviously the longer you keep these beers, the more the hops are going to drop out and things like that. But I would say this beer, I'm really curious as to when this was bottled, because the hops are still quite obvious in this one, in honesty. So yeah, the green component of this beer, there's a little bit of earthiness there. Of course, you've got quite a bright floral aromaticity to it, kind of oily in a sense, and at the front of the nose you get a wee bit of sort of grassiness too. So yeah, that for me, that's very, very interesting in this particular beer. I really do like how that pieces together. So yeah, all in all, green component still quite noticeable in this one. I thought this beer, it said 2022 on the side, so I thought it was maybe about just a bit over 2 years old, something like that. Yeah, so in terms of the fruity side of things then, to round off the aroma, for me, yeah, it's kind of typical Imperial Stout fruits that you're getting out of this one. Quite a sharp raisiny note, lots and lots of juicy plum, big kind of figgy notes. There's maybe a bit of date in there as well, in all honesty. And yeah, you've got a bit of like blackcurrant and blackberry actually. So yeah, the way that this beer pieces together, I think, is really nice. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. A lovely smelling beer, this one. As I always say, take a bit of time to appreciate the aroma before you get stuck into it. But yeah, I can breathe again. Yeah, a bit tired filming this one in all honesty. But yeah, let's leave it at that for aroma. I think it's time to have a taste of this one. So yeah, this one is the Imperial Russian Stout, Café Arabica Du Pérou, if I'm pronouncing the name correctly. But let's get stuck in. An 11% Imperial Stout from the wonderful Brasserie Popihn in Vaumont, Lyon, in kind of central France. Slange, skål, cheers, santé. Yeah, that's nice. First impression, very smooth, quite silky Imperial Stout. I actually thought with it being an Imperial Coffee Stout, it would be a little bit more kind of punchy in that regard. But again, it's very smooth, and the coffee beans really start to come out into the aftertaste with this one, which yeah, I do really like actually. So yeah, for me, yeah, it's one of the smoother and silkier Imperial coffee stouts that I've come across. But again, as I would expect from Popihn, this is a very nicely done beer. So big thumbs up to them for this. So let's break this down then and describe it a little bit more in depth. So yeah, middle third of your palate then. The backbone of the beer, you do have a bit of that roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust. Again, it's not very aggressive in that sense. Yeah, there's a little bit of roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust, but it's almost a little bit like a kind of softer, rye bready bread crust that comes out of this one. As you move further forward in that middle third of your palate, you can feel there's a little touch of like woodiness in there. And after that, you have after that, you've got a nice little bit of, or above that, sorry, you do get a little smattering of kind of cracker in there. And then the next layer up is like a more dense, rye bready sort of note. So yeah, the dense rye bready character. Yeah, there's a dense sort of rye bready character that comes out of this one, and that's the dense rye bready character that comes out of this one, I think, is quite nice. It's actually quite sweet, but it gets drier into the aftertaste. Then above that, you start to get like it's a kind of mix between like a chocolate brownie. Yeah, it's kind of a mix between a chocolate brownie and a chocolate, chocolate mix of chocolate brownie and chocolate sponge, I would say, that comes out of this one. So yeah, the chocolate brownie and chocolate sponge that comes out of this one does get a wee bit kind of darker and drier into the aftertaste. And then yeah, for me, you've got a little bit of nutty character. There's just a wee bit of nuttiness kind of emanating from that cakey brownie type character into the aftertaste. Above that you start to get the kind of chocolatey layer as well. So the kind of chocolatey notes that come out of the beer are also very, very interesting. Pardon me. So yeah, the sort of chocolatey, the kind of the chocolatey layer in this one is. I often see sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. So the chocolatey layer on this one, it's actually quite a dry chocolate in honesty, but yeah, it's maybe like a 70-80% cocoa chocolate, and it's almost got a wee bit of a dryness, like a kind of cocoa nib type thing to it. But yeah, as you come further forward toward the front of that middle third of your palate, it's got a little bit of a kind of more 40% cocoa chocolate. It gets a little bit more milky, if you like. And then, pardon me, get a bit of gas out of this, even though there's not a lot of carbonation there. But yeah, on top of the chocolatey layer, you start to get the brown sugar. So there's a little bit of like a toasty brown sugar layer, then it's a kind of more leathery brown sugar, and then in the centre of your palate, you can feel there's that little circle there where it's the kind of brown sugary, boozy type characters coming out of the beer. But I will say this one masks its alcohol very, very well. Like I said, a really very silky, smooth and kind of sweet Imperial Coffee Stout compared to others. But yeah, in the dead centre of your palate, you can feel there is a little bit of that kind of boozy, treacly molasses type note at the dead centre of your palate. Then yeah, that little boozy circle, it's kind of surrounded by caramel, and maybe there's a little bit of biscuit into the aftertaste there as well. But yeah, that's the middle third of your palate, and where the majority of the malty side of things is coming out. But yeah, that's everything about that. So let's go to the back third of your palate then. So I think the coffee in this one, for me, the coffee bean is actually kind of manifesting itself in that border region between middle and back third of your palate. So yeah, you get that kind of bready build up in there. So you've got the rye bread in the base, the kind of chocolate spongy character in the middle, and then yeah, within the chocolate and on top, I'd say yeah, it's another bit of a kind of wholemeal brown bready character, but within those top two layers, that's where the coffee bean is sitting. So I would say that compared to the aroma, the coffee kind of flavour is a little bit more earthy. It does have quite a bit of like an oily floral aromaticity to it, but the red fruity notes that I was picking up in the aroma are definitely coming out here as well. So yeah, soft roast, quite aromatic, and it's kind of more like a figgy, plummy type character that's coming out of the coffee bean, I would say. So yeah, the coffee sits there and lingers into the aftertaste. Yeah, so the backbone, or the back third of your palate with this beer, sorry, as I've often said, the back third of your palate is going to give you very similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just at different intensities. But yeah, the back third of your palate, again, you've got that kind of bread crusty sort of base, but it's just a bit drier. It's not really overly roasty and toasty or aggressive. You've got a bit of cracker, then you've got the kind of rye bready layer above that, which was a little bit lighter, taller, more airy and drier. Then above that, you have the above that you get the kind of chocolate spongy type layer as well, which is quite nice. And then above that you get the nice kind of, you can feel a little bit more of a kind of, there is a wee bit of like a wholemeal brown bready character there, which feels a little bit lighter, and yeah, some of the coffee just kind of spreads into that, which I think is very, very nice. So yeah, some of the more kind of fibrousy parts of the coffee bean sit in that kind of slightly wholemeal brown bready layer on the top of the malty side of the back third of your palate. But then yeah, you get a wee bit of the kind of drier side and more toast. There is a slightly charred chocolatey note just creeps over the top of that bread on the back third of your palate. And then of course you've got the yeasty character sitting above everything else. So the yeasty side of this beer, for me, at its core, like, it's quite a dry, rye bready type character. Then as you move further out from that, it's a bit more kind of like wholemeal brown bready. Then the extremity of the yeast is a little bit more like a kind of, that is actually a bit like a kind of dry, well-fired bread crust, in fact. So yeah, you do get a little bit of that roasty, toasty, well-fired character on the top of that back third of your palate. And definitely, yeah, the back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is really, really nice. Yeah, so on the hoppy side of things then, for me, the hoppy side of the beer, there's a little bit of hoppy character to it, but it's actually not as prominent in the flavour as it was in the aroma. But yeah, there's a nice little bit of earthiness in the back corners of the palate. Then as you move further forward, it's got a wee touch of a herbal character, and as you push further forward from that, you've got a little bit more floral aromaticity coming out of it, so that's quite nice too. Round the front curve of your tongue, it's definitely lighter and more sort of grassy, I would say. But yeah, the green components at the front of your palate's a little bit more kind of oily. But yeah, on the let's go to the front third of your palate then to round off the flavour section with this one. So yeah, the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get that bit of kind of bready build up in there again. Rye bread in the base, the sort of chocolate brownie spongy sort of thing in there, and then a wee bit of a more wholemeal brown bready layer on top. The base of that front third of your palate, I would say, yeah, it's the bread crust, the cracker, the kind of rye bready sort of layer, the more dense rye bready kind of note, then a sort of fluffier chocolate sponge, and you can feel some of the kind of smoother chocolate just sitting on top of that. Then you've got that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just kind of roll their way out of the beer. So let's have a wee look at that. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer is actually, yeah, the fruity side of this beer is actually really nice and soft and kind of juicy. Yeah, it's really quite juicy and soft in a sense. So if it's not quite as sharp in things as I thought it was going to be from the aroma, but I wonder how much of that fruity character was coming from the coffee bean. So yeah, at the back of that front third of your palate, you've got quite a little bit of juicy plum, and as you go down in the bubble there, it's got a wee bit of a, there's a wee bit of a prune and a bit of a datey character underneath, and as you come further forward to the middle of that front third of your palate, it's a bit more about the kind of figgy character in a sense. There's maybe a peary sultane type note into the aftertaste, but yeah, the front half of that front third of your palate is all about the yeah, it's all about the kind of, I would say, like, it's kind of like black currant underneath, like a more oily black currant, then a softer, juicier black berry sitting on top. So yeah, the fruity side for me, plum, prune, a little bit of date, black currant and blackberry in this one. Quite soft and juicy red fruity characters actually. So yeah, a wee bit different from the aroma in that particular regard. So yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the flavour of this beer, but overall, to summarise, a very smooth and slightly sweeter Imperial Coffee Stout, this one. I think this is very, very nice. So yeah, let's round off the review then with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. For me, this beer, I'd say it's top end of mid-body, bottom end of full body. The carbonation is very, very smooth, like I said. It's got quite a silky, smooth, almost slightly creamy kind of character to it. The IBU is a bit difficult to say in this one, in all honesty. I don't think this is too high IBU, maybe about like 40 or 50 at the absolute most. You get some dryness out of it, which you could easily conflate with bitterness. But the malt base, like we said, it's a bit toasty underneath, smooth in the middle, and it's got a kind of dry sweetness on top. You've got a lovely little bit of, kind of roastiness that kind of sits there into the aftertaste as well. But yeah, your hoppy side of the beer isn't too bitter. Then yeah, some kind of soft, juicy fruit in this one. And the coffee, I think, you get a lot of the coffee into the aftertaste with this one. But yeah, another very, very nice beer from Brasserie Popihn, and I'm certainly glad that I picked this one up and that I found one of their beers here in Hong Kong, of course. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. So yeah, this one was the Imperial Russian Stout, Café Arabica Du Pérou, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, an 11% Imperial Coffee Stout from the wonderful Brasserie Popihn in Vaumont, Lyon. in almost central France basically. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Brasserie Popihn as well, and we'll see about returning to these guys and some other French breweries at some point in the very near future. But until the next time, Sláinte, Skål, cheers, santé. Check out my social media, check out their social media, and I'll see you guys very, very soon. Ciao just now.